IRMA, before IRMA, there was no institution or no discipline for that matter which you could call rural management. Of course, there was agribusiness management, agriculture management in agriculture had already come in. And but encompassing the whole rural segment was not there. And the contribution, I would say that we can put the contribution on 3 counts. One is that IRMA was one of the first institutions which prepared the students to work for rural organizations owned by rural people, mostly cooperative, producers cooperatives, the government development organizations, non-government development organizations. They equip the students, the training was such that first time in India, IRMA created a very structured rural immersion program. We called it field work. A structured, why I said structured, it was somewhere between 8 to 10 weeks. Stay in a village, in a farmer's house, eating what they eat, using whatever they have, and learn from them. But here, they never went as a researcher. They were trying to live their lived-in experience of a rural life. At the same time, it was structured because they were looking at the production system. They were understanding the markets, rural markets. They were penetrating into the heartlands with this objective that apart from the livelihoods and markets, the cultural aspects that affect the rural life, and in all its hues. For many urban students coming from, most students used to come from, let us face this fact, most students used to come from urban areas. They had no idea about what rural is. But these 8 weeks, 10 weeks sometimes they spend, that was a transformative experience. And this was buttressed by the classroom, the course contents. The courses were so designed. It did not matter whether you were studying statistics or finance or accounting. Every time in our discussion, rural will emerge because we use rural cases. And students would go through course after course, case after case. And a large number of students, though our batch sizes were very small. So in terms of total impact, I would say in a country like India, it was very small. But also, they had a great impact on the corporates also. Corporates which never thought or never understood how to align the interest of farmers with their business interest, started looking at it. Many of our students made they made a difference. They made a difference to the understanding by corporates or other organizations, the way to view rural and how rural people, their livelihoods can be integrated with the goals of many corporate organizations. Same thing, if you look at all the, particularly I will focus on dairy cooperatives because those days we used to largely focus on dairy cooperatives. You look at all the dairy cooperatives in the country, particularly Amul and all that, all were headed by IRMAs. And they made a tremendous difference. An organization rising from a 500 crore turnover to 1 lakh, about 1 lakh crore turnover is a big jump in the last 30, 40 years. And that is what IRMA is. IRMA, which has now become TSO, is trying to achieve. IRMA had a very specific focus, rural, of course, rural, and within rural, because our affinity with dairy cooperatives. In fact, IRMA started to provide human resources for technical managerial resources, particular managerial resources for dairy cooperatives in the country. That is the origin. Today, IRMA's transformation as TSU has made the picture very big. Now, TSU has a much bigger canvas to play with. The whole cooperative sector, which ranges not only from dairy to agriculture cooperative, fisheries, and every day. For example, now we have a taxi cooperatives, and every day new forms of cooperatives are coming up, and both in urban and rural. That's another challenge that has come, and I think TSU is very well equipped to deal with it. And the scope is growing larger by the day. Slowly, we are making inroads into many other, for example, sugar cooperatives, banking, rural banking, cooperative banking and finance. It's a huge fit. The whole find a cooperative, when we started, someone said, why you have cooperative banking and finance? I said, cooperative banking is only part of the story. There will be cooperative insurance for people not only working, but because we can help newer forms of cooperatives. And all these cooperatives, not only cooperatives, but other organizations which are supporting the cooperative ecosystem. For example, we are talking about startups, innovation and startups in which will support the cooperative ecosystem. Because in today's world, cooperatives need to leverage modern technology, including AI. AI will be one of the major engine for growth in the cooperative sector. And because of that, we need specialized organizations. And we cannot have certain types of work cannot be done directly by cooperatives, but cooperatives require those services. So for that, what we call is a ecosystem for cooperative in future. And that ecosystem, we are also looking and trying to work towards building that ecosystem for effective cooperatives in future. For example, there is a cooperative card which our Honorable Minister just few days back inaugurated. Now that is going to be a big business, and that will be a game changer. All of us know that. So therefore, fisheries is, I'm sure it is going to be one of the biggest of its processing and exports, because we are largely looking at exports market of this. Large number of agribusiness processing cooperatives that help. One is, of course, when we procure, processing, marketing, creating brands. Now agribusiness cooperatives, there will be large number of agribusiness cooperatives. Particularly now we are looking at the horticulture sector, because whenever one has to understand this, the perishability. Now why dairy succeeded in most places, dairy cooperatives? Because of the nature of the commodity that it was dealing with. Dairy cooperatives succeeded because of very high perishability. Farmers cannot retain it. Same logic applies for fisheries. It's a highly perishable commodity. And there is we know that there is a huge demand for the services in this sector, and maybe cooperatives, and there are already functioning, just it needs to be professionalized, their working needs to be professionalized, and that's why We need human resources in this sector. When I talk about professionalization, I'm also talking about changing of mindsets of managers, those leaders, everyone, that it has to be professionalized, it has to be big. You will have to go for modern technology, adopt technology, and leverage technology for further future growth. From the recruiter's perception, I think the only thing that will change is that now there will be, the net is much bigger. And what is the big, look at it, that we were catering to the dairy cooperatives, some agribusiness organizations, and the technology ecosystem that is needed for effective management of cooperatives. So all this we were doing. Now, once we have become TSU, the types of recruiters, they will not change. The only thing is that the numbers will grow. Suppose we had some 30 organizations, 40 organizations, now it will be 100 organizations. Because we have all federations and everyone wants to professionalize. In fact, there are almost 18, 19 national federations, more are yet to come. And within each national federation, there are many organizations. So the canvas is becoming bigger and bigger every time. Second, another thing, it is not just about cooperatives. As I said already, it is about the cooperative ecosystem. For example, the fintechs. There are other technology service providers who are needed for effective management of cooperatives. TSU, as an institution of national importance, would also like to participate in the whole process of the development of those. The students can go there, our faculty will conduct research. In fact, we have courses already in the existing programs on AI and development, use of AI in cooperatives. So those are not only AI, of course AI is much high, but apart from AI, there are other traditional services, technology services that are required, high-end services that are required. That this organization will have to, because ultimately TSU is an organization, it's a catalyst for growth. If you ask me personally, that I view TSU as a catalyst for growth in the sectors that have been so far neglected. Okay, the first thing will be that you are, if anyone who is thinking of applying to TSU, that you are getting into a world of opportunities. As I already said that TSU as an institute of national importance is or will act as a catalyst for growth of the country, particularly in certain chosen sectors. So of course, when you go for an uncharted territory, you need to have, I should say, a brain and heart of Columbus. Columbus, who is ready to explore or brave enough to explore that unexplored region. Eke out your own. You know, I should say that this sort of non-traditional, it's not a traditional MBA that one can have. One has to be this spirit of adventure. Okay. And someone who would say has that a strong entrepreneurial spirit. It's a combination of this. That's something to do. And in fact, if you look at the past records of Irmans, many Irmans, I think hundreds of them, have created new paths for themselves. Now we have been transformed into the Tribhuvan Sahkari University. So this was actually Tribhuvan Das's view. And university embodies in the spirit that was there, that it has to, you will have to. When Tribhuvan Das started Amul way back in 1946, it was that time the country was ruled by Britishers. There was, government was not favor, it was against it, against this movement. But Tribhuvan Das took it upon himself to fight it out, create something, and he swam against the current. And from that day, the first cooperative, and maybe few hundred liters milk, it has grown to a huge tree which has inspired many people, not only within the country, outside the country. We have cooperatives coming up where they never had, whether it's in Sri Lanka or in Africa or in West Indies. So and they were inspired by what Tribhuvan Das did, because someone dared to travel, the rest traveled. And I should also emphasize, this distinction, yes, rural, urban, but rural, urban is a continuum. It's about people. More importantly, we are talking about people. People who are less privileged. And that continues, that spirit will continue with TSU. And I would say, for students, it is a whole new world, new opportunities, but someone with a heart of Columbus. Someone has to come with the heart of Columbus. So be a Columbus. When I joined IRMA, of course, I was much younger, 33 years back, as a young man, and IRMA was in its first decade, just completed the first decade. And in fact, just before I joined, a few months before that, I think, a decadal review was done and it was submitted, the report. So first thing, the induction, faculty induction coordinator gave me was the induction report. Said, you go through the decadal report. He said that you go through the decadal report, then you will understand what IRMA is and what it is not. And it was very inspiring. But I think most inspiring was my first, those days. Now, whenever faculty used to join, they would have an interview with the chairman. So I was, Professor Tushar Shah took me to the chairman's office in the NDDB. Those days, chairman used to sit in NDDB. He was also chairman of NDDB. And Professor Tushar Shah told me that we share the chairman, the NDDB. And when I met him, he did not ask many questions, few questions he asked, but he was talking about, he was basically, that's the time my induction started. He was talking about his philosophy. And he was talking about, which I still, that why cooperatives are so important organization in the country. Of course, I remember he asked me why you want to join. But his ideas of why cooperatives are so important for development of a nation which is struggling. And he talked about our dependency on foreign aid and dependency for food and how we have overcome all this And cooperatives has been a major engine for such. The two realizations were there, and I should say this. We had a lot of internal debates, and that IRMA has to be, one thing was that IRMA has to be impactful. It has to have an impact on the society. We are having impact, but that is very limited. We need to also grow in size. Those days, between 60 to 90 students we take. Then we thought that maybe we'll expand, then 120 students. And then we said, and many people, that was a part of a debate, that, okay, there are many organizations which may not be cooperative, they may not be so-called rural organizations, but they help the rural sector. They are also contributing to the growth of rural sector, farmers' income, etc. To give you an example, say ITC Agrotech or Britannia, all of them were working. So the idea was that there are, or many banks, for example, ICICI, are just giving, or SBI, or any other bank, which were directly contributing to the growth of rural sector. They may not be in the cooperative field. Why IRMA cannot participate in this journey? Why IRMAs cannot participate? But we understood that this is an area where IRMA can start working with corporates for their social responsibility projects. So CSR also entered that course of time. So slowly the canvas started becoming bigger. Then we thought of that there are other, say for example, input service providers. Input providers, not only input service, input providers to the rural sector, that they may be corporate, maybe a fertilizer company, maybe in the corporate sector. So we started working with them. So therefore, one has to have a much bigger canvas. Rural sector always, and this is what we held that time, and then continue to expand on those lines. And let me tell you this, that rural sectors or cooperatives, they don't exist in isolation. They have a symbiotic relationship with many other organizations, whether it is pure banking, finance, inputs providers, all those organizations. So there is a symbiotic relationship. And we'll have to understand those touch points where we can leverage those relationships for the upliftment of the cooperative sector. So there was I should say, the major change, I should say, came sometime around 2007. In fact, incidentally, 2008, I was the placement, those days we used to call coordinator, now chair, placement chair. And I thought that the changes will have to come. So I prepared a proposal, presented it to the chairman. He took it to board. It got an approval. So we had that year itself, we had a special committee which will look into or invite newer forms of organizations. And I think that spirit continued ever since. That spirit continued, and IRMA started growing. And however, much later, I think by end of 12, 13, I think we went for a much higher number of seats, 240, which was 240, 180 to 240, and then slowly we started growing, and where the canvas became much bigger. And today what we are envisaging in the coming years to come, we thinking that canvas will be much bigger. And another thing, important change, that TSU, Tribhuvan Sahkari University has got a huge new campus, will be having a huge new campus, which the construction will start maybe in few months' time. And it is going to be a beautiful, very green, 125-acre campus. The architect has designed a huge, nice layout, and we are all waiting very eagerly for the construction to start. And once it is done, we will have a much bigger infrastructure to cater to the growing needs. And we are also thankful to the Ministry of Cooperation and Government of India for transforming Institute of Rural Management into Tribhuvan Sahkari University, and it's going to be a next big thing in the development of cooperatives in the country. Thank you.